So I think we're going to be seeing more of an engineer with some of the deck parts, or a deck officer with some of the engineering parts, or you're going to see something in between.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gosberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners, and welcome to the 129th episode of the Shipping Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to introduce you to a chief engineer who graduated from Kings Point, have an MBA and a master's degree in maritime logistics, and is currently the chair to the IMO HTW subcommittee. HTW, that is Human Element, Training and Watchkeeping. And this subcommittee deals with mariner training issues. Her name is Mayte Medina, and she develops and manages legislative and regulatory proposals concerning merchant vessel personnel and labor issues in her position at the U.S. Coast Guard. I met Mayte at the IMO building on November the 27th, 2019. And I hope that you will enjoy listening to this power woman as much as I did getting the chance to sit down with her. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, Lena. Thank you for having me. My name is Mayte Medina, and I work for the United States Coast Guard. I'm the chief of the Maritime Credentialing Office.
And what is your background?
See, it's interesting background. I was born and raised in Panama, middle-income parents, no relationship to any maritime experience except the Panama Canal is in Panama. And then finally came to study in the U.S., went to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point. And after that, went back to work for Panama. I sailed for 2 years as an engineer and worked for the Panama Administration, and then finally came back to work for the U.S. Coast Guard. Meaning at the end of the day, that's where I ended up. So I work for the Coast Guard now.
So the Panama Canal was your first encounter with shipping? Or?
It was not that it was my first encounter. It's the closest thing that I ever, growing up, that you become is the Panama Canal. There's a little story, and I guess it's that our best friends, my parents' best friends that lived across the street, were from the U.S. And my mom used to leave me with them. And he was a pilot in the canal. So as a little kid, he comes with these stories, and that's what I wanted to be, was a pilot. And of course, at the time when I was growing up, the Panamanians could not be pilots. It was still U.S. And destiny has it later on that because of my mom, who found this advertisement in the newspaper to get people to go to Kings Point, that I ended up going to Kings Point. Yeah, so it's because of them, that both my parents, that I ended up at Kings Point. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Otherwise, I would not be here.
Mm-hmm. People talk so much about and so good about Kings Point. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about that for people who doesn't know?
Kings Point, I always say that Kings Point is a great place to go to school, and it's also a great place to be from. You get the greatest education you can have. The people that go there, it's a high standard. When I went through school through there, it was a high standard to be able to get in. So the people that were around me they were there to study, to be able to get a degree, and also to eventually go out to sea or work in the maritime industry. So the education is great. Also, once you graduate, you go into, as always, all these schools, you have the networks. It's a great place to come from, I say, because it doesn't matter whether you know the person, whether the person graduated 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they would always help you. And when I say help you, they're not going to give you something for free, but they're going to help you enter into the industry, enter into a job, give you advice for free. One of my mentors is Joe Cox, who also happens to be from Kings Point. And he's been a great mentor for me. My first mentor was also Captain Alfred Fiore, one of the first class at Kings Point, class of 42. He was my first boss. And how I went to work for him was because of a letter he wrote recommending me for the job, even though he didn't know me. And about a year later, I ended up working for him because they thought we were close. But just because I came from Kings Point, he assumed that you had a great education, so you must be good. And I ended up working for him. And it's the best thing ever happened.
So what did you do then after Kings Point?
Well, after Kings Point, I went out to sea for 2 years. I went out as an engineer. It was hard. One, and an engineer and a woman. And also there were challenges. You're short. I'm short. So that was another challenge. There was a publication this week, a little story about myself, and there's a picture of me wearing a fireman's outfit. That picture is the reason why I decided to leave, to stop going out to sea. You put the fireman's outfit, you're part of the muster list to fight fires, and I couldn't wear the outfit with the breathing apparatus. So I realized what was a shortcoming. I might forget it. I've done it. I'm glad I did it, but it's time for me to go ashore. So then I started working for the Panama Administration. And I worked for them for about 7 years. And that's where I met my first mentor, Captain Fiore. And that's how I learned about IMO. They started sending me to the organization to negotiate on behalf of Panama. And that's how I met my second boss, my second, third boss, by coming to IMO. But it's very different working for governments than working for industry when you come to represent them. But I think probably that's why it gave me a good way of looking at things differently. It's not only from the government side, it's from the industry side, from the industry perspective, from the seafaring perspective too. So you put all those things together, and it's what I really like doing. Then I think it was about right after working for Panama, I went to work in Europe for a consulting firm, and then I was doing engineering work as part of a firm, and ended up doing some work on management systems, and that's where I met my third mentor, Mr. Chris Genman, Captain Genman, who retired from Global Maritime. And from there, I guess it was Joe Angelo who asked me to come work for the Coast Guard. And here I am today. I've been with them 20 years.
And what is your position today?
Okay, what I do for the Coast Guard is we have an office that deals with everything that has to do with seafarers. From training, labor issues, manning issues, medical issues. That's what my office does. I have a very diverse group of personnel working under me. I have chief engineers to deck officers, also Coast Guard personnel that have retired from the Coast Guard. And we deal with everything that has to do with seafarers from the U.S. perspective. And also we get to represent the United States at the International Labor Organization, at the IMO, and also at the World Health Organization. You got medical issues that have to do with seafarers. This probably has been my most rewarding job. That office that I head, that I'm the lead for, we have the ability to influence thousands and thousands of people. It's great to work there, but it's also a great responsibility. If we make the wrong decision, we're affecting them negatively. So this is why it's not only the people that the Coast Guard has working in this office, it's also the advisors that we have outside the Coast Guard. We can't do it ourselves. We need these advisory groups. And these are people that join the advisory groups. They don't get paid to do that work, but they provide the best advice we can get. I have the Merchant Personnel Advisory Committee and the Medical Personnel Advisory Committee, and these are 38 people that donate their time. And we, the Coast Guard, could not do it without them. But that's, like I said, I love my job, and I think my office, the personnel there love their job, and they know what their responsibility is.
So what are the biggest changes that you have seen in your career, in the maritime industry?
Okay, I think when I went to school, I remember we were going from steam to diesel. So that was the first change. And I remember that I graduated with both a steam and a diesel expertise. Then what I saw after that was trying to put certain technologies in it, including unmanned engine room. I still remember when it was a big deal. It just happened. So that was one. That was the next one that I still remember perfectly, like it was yesterday. And of course, now we're looking at, potentially having unmanned ships, having remote operated ships. So at the end of the day, it's just the industry changes a little bit at a time. It's always technology driven, is to make it better. The other thing, of course, going from steam to diesel and now going to alternate fuels to be able to protect the environment. So sometimes it's at an about phase. Some of the colleagues keep saying, maybe we should go back to steam instead of, and I think it's all about technology coming in, and it's also to learn from advances that have already happened. Let's take a look at it again and come out with something different. But what I think I like that the industry is very interesting, it's we adjust very well. The challenge, and I think it's coming to IMO is interesting to look at the challenge because we would always be behind. And in a way, I'm glad we're always behind because that way you allow the industry to evolve at their own pace, and then we are trying to catch up. The hardest challenge always for the IMO and for the industry in general is anytime you see a new change, you have to train your seafarers to be competent. That's the hardest part, every single time. And there's no silver bullet on how you can address that or how you can change that. We'll always be behind. We just have to change a little bit at a time and give short-term solutions while we get the long-term solution in. But at the end of the day, it's always going to be the seafarers. But that's always the big challenge, is how to get them to be competent for whatever it is they're putting in, whatever change it is. The days when, in my view, in general, the days where the last 20 years has been about the administration making sure the seafarers are competent. I think we're going to go back about 50 years ago when it was the ship owner helping the seafarer be competent, because the technology is for one ship. So you're not going to train thousands of people because one ship has that technology. You need then the ship owner to come in and help do that. And I think they're doing that. But it's going to be cooperation. I mean, it continue to be cooperation always. They adjust.
But there is some sort of opposites meeting here then, because some people say we need to collaborate, all of us, to make a new world and to also move into this industry revolution 4.0. And on the other hand, the average ship owner he or she owns 10 ships or something like that. And then you are talking about one ship and the people on board that needs to train. So there is, I don't know, there are different roads. And
there are. And you hit the nail on the head, meaning all those things are going to happen. Unfortunately, right now, the technology is coming very fast, but the technology is not going on every ship. Even though a ship owner has 10 ships, only one may have that technology. So even though I have the other 9, I'm not going to train the other crew in the other 9 because of that one ship I own. So at the end of the day, one of the things that we think is going to happen, and I personally do that, is the days when we used to train the seafarer to be the be-all, end-all, just in case, we're going to go now to even more minimum, just the basics, because the ships are not like it used to be. Also, because the technology is ahead, the performance standards for all the technology, we don't have those yet. So one piece of equipment that one company is developing or putting on board the ship is not going to be the same that the other company is, even though they're supposed to perform the same. They don't look the same. So you cannot really train. What do you train for? So you have to train for the base concept. So it's going to be very minimum, which means you're going to have to pick up the rest on board the ship.
But that is also why people who is not in the maritime industry do not understand, because people compare us to, lorry production, lorry manufacturing, and they are all the same. You put out thousands of the same lorry or car or whatever. So that is why people do not understand if they're not in the maritime industry.
You're right. And they don't. I mean, one of the things, and I think it's this Secretary General, Mr. Kita Klim, keeps saying, is that everything has to be developed around the seafarer. If you develop everything around the seafarer is the center, all the manufacturers will get together and develop, even though they're different, meaning you have different brand names, the concept and also the basic, the buttons, will always be on the same side. 3 buttons or 4 buttons, so it would be the same. So that way, when you train, you can train globally. You don't have to train for one. But that can only be done when there's a performance standard for the equipment, an agreed performance standard. And that's where IMO comes in. And as you said, this is a revolution. This is something we've never seen before. We concentrated on one piece of equipment. We did with ECDIS, and we did when we went from steam to diesel. Now we're looking at, meaning it's a global change. You're going to have also, the one thing that I get a lot in the U.S., particularly when I go to the training schools, is, so unmanned ships are coming, what's going to happen with me? I'm like, that's not going to be within our lifetime, or at least not within my lifetime. I said, but I think what the schools need to do is prepare them to be able to learn new technology. And it's not about learning the technology, but these kids that come in right now that are in school, they know the technology. They know how to they know how to play games. We did not grow up with that. You give me a game, I fail miserably. They know how to do that. So it's intuitive to them.
And it's a mindset.
It is. I keep giving the example, and I told the kids, I went to California Maritime. My husband plays a game. He was playing a game, and my niece, 7 years old, she was watching over his shoulder, and he gave her the game. She scored better than he did. She's only 7. So it's a different mindset. It's a different way of thinking. It's intuitive. Their hands move fast. We didn't grow up with that. So that's what I mean, that the schools can actually prepare them for that. There's some changes that could happen before the technology comes in. And people are talking about those right now. whether or not it's almost like whether or not we take a mid-step before we go the big leap in the future. And there are things that can be done. But I think the schools are going to have to play also a part. They're going to have to take a leap of faith in giving them certain tools so they can accept the technology when they get on the ships. So it's going to be interesting.
So the education is going to change and the training will be changing. And
I don't think the training there's going to be a major change. It's going to be more about the electronics. It's going to be more about, I think in the future, we're looking at non-traditional seafarers. We have always taken engine. And I think now we're going to need more of multi-purpose, depending on whether or not they decide to automate certain functions on board the ships. If they decide to automate navigation, which it already happens, then that person can be doing something else. Right now, the way that the requirements and the training it's you're either tech or engine. There's no in between. Only very few countries have the in between. So I think we're going to be seeing more of an engineer with some of the deck parts, or a deck officer with some of the engineering parts, or you're going to see something in between. And we need to be able to prepare the students to be able to receive that in between. Yeah, those additional training. So,
will we see more female seafarers?
I think we are. I think we're already seeing more. And I think we women that are in the industry, we ourselves are making a bigger effort to go out and tell them that they can do it, we can do it. We're getting more involved. So I think we're about to see more. Yeah.
Good.
We're already seeing more, yeah.
And I see a lot of young women coming into the industry on shore with new knowledge that we haven't really had here before, like the blockchain and the 3D printing and all of that we haven't.
Yeah, I think I want to call it also a revolution. And I think that, as I said, it's not only women are taking more interest, men themselves that are in the industry are taking more interest that this is a pool of people that was not really targeted before to come in. So they're taking more interest on that. I think also, so the men are also the different shipping companies, government agencies are taking more interest. So you're seeing more going in. So I think it's interesting. I think it's happening. It's not going to happen fast. We're not going to see, but I think it's happening. We're seeing it. But like I said, I think it's more about educating those that are coming behind, even the high schools, that this is an industry that is worth getting into. And there's also certain, as you mentioned, there are certain topics and there are certain expertise that was not needed before, and now you can. In fact, I was talking to somebody that is in the mass autonomous vessel industry, and one of the things that they tell me was, in the future, one of the areas we're going to need is philosophy majors. So then they explained, now I understood, but I'm like, okay, it would be interesting to find out how many women are philosophy majors.
Mm-hmm.
Which is then you have tapped into a totally different group that was not there before. So it's an interesting time.
Yes,
what's
it is.
Coming.
And this also connects to my soapbox, which is visibility for the industry. Mm-hmm. How can we become more visible to the general public? Okay,
I think there's a couple things, and I've always said that, and I keep telling that to my bosses, is at the end of the day, it's about education. It's not, so it's targeted. Where this year we were targeting, and I hope it continues, to try to get more women in, so we target that. One of the things that the industry has not done very well is we have not really told the public that glass or that camera or anything came via a ship. And where is it made? Where is it made? How did it get to where they sold it? Hey, we're in London. They didn't get made here. How did they get here? It's not only how did it get here, but why does it cost how much it costs? Because it came by ship, because there's a duty. So all those, I mean, it's almost like it's a chain. We've never been good at promoting our chain.
No, and how can we do that now?
And I think it's going to take an effort similar to what we did this year. It's going to take an effort to even put it in the podcast. I mean, it's a great thing. I think more people are listening to that. We never did before. And it's not only that, it's going to be TV, it's going to be the internet. And when I say make an effort, it's not only IMO, it's all of us are going to have to make an effort. Not only the governments, but the ship owner organizations, to be able to get everybody to know, hey, that camera came from another country in the Far East, and that's how I got it here. So I think that's the only way to do it, just making that effort, and we haven't been very good at it. And I think it's the right time because we have the right avenues. You have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have... so I think that we can do that, but it's going to take an effort to actually do that. It's almost a campaign to actually educate the public, not educate ourselves, but educate the public on who we are, the maritime industry, why are we so important. It's not only about the goods, but also the food, the humanitarian assistance that is provided. Also, meaning we talk about migration, and I know it's a horrible thing when you see it on TV, the way that, hey, they are trying to get a better life, so they are migrating. But at least we may be able to take, I don't want to use the word advantage, but of the fact that, hey, we're helping to save these people that are trying to get a better life, trying to migrate. And it's done by ships. Yeah. So those are, that's the positive. But yeah.
Yeah, and also to attract the brightest and the best young people to come into our industry, because we need them as well.
We do. You're right. And especially looking at the future, we're going to have to. And I think this year was interesting. It was not only about the attracting women, but I think it was broader than that. I think every country is going to have to do their part in their own backyard. Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's not even going to the maritime schools, but those that are coming behind, the younger generation, the high schools, the elementary schools. That's where it's going to be. But the one thing that we need to make sure, though, is that they understand that it's not just being on a ship and you don't have a way to see the world, where before it was, hey, you go out to sea, you can see the world. We're going to have to tell them that it's a great industry. And not only is a great industry to go out to sea, but that it's a great industry that you have many different things that you can do. You can go out to sea first, and then you can end up somewhere else. So
and sailing is not for everyone.
Correct. You're right. It's not. So we're going to have to sell them that it's more than just going out to sea.
And we have so many passionate people in this industry that could help to do that, I think.
You're right. There's a lot. And I think the IMO has the great program with the maritime ambassadors. And that could be used very well to be able to start that. That's just a sliver, though, because, like I said, the countries need to do their parts in their own backyards. And I think also WMU plays a great role, meaning we have this Secretary General is one of the best examples. He's a graduate of WMU. So going back not only to his country, but when he visits, to make sure they know that he came from, hey, he went to WMU and look at where he's at. So those are the things that they need to see. But there's plenty of, like you said, there's plenty of people in the industry that have great stories that they are inspiring, inspirational, and they can go out and try to get as many people as they can. So everybody can put a little grain of salt, we would have, as you said, the brightest.
So who would you be interested in listening to if I make an interview with the Shipping Podcast? Who do you think I should meet the next?
You know, there's actually a woman from Norway that I've looked up to since I've known her. And it's Storage Stemre from the Norwegian delegation. We did the Polar Code and the IGF code for alternative fuels. She did both concurrently for IMO. She was the chair. She has an amazing story. I think hopefully she won't retire anytime soon, but she worked in Norway during the time, meaning how she came up, where she started, is an amazing story. And where she's at, it's an amazing story. So
I will try and catch her then.
Yeah, she's here this week. She would be one that I would definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so good. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to speak to me.
Thank you for having me.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Mayte. I know you represent the U.S. interest at 3 UN agencies. That is IMO, International Maritime Organization, ILO, the International Labour Organization, and WHO, the World Health Organization. And that is very impressive. I am happy that you bring up the mentors that you have had, the men who has opened the doors for you in your career. I have experienced the same thing, and I think it's important to say that moving forward, we can only do that together with the men who also wants the change that we so dearly want, a more diverse and inclusive maritime industry. Something that we spoke about after the interview is the special edition of Proceedings, which is the US Coast Guard magazine, and the special edition highlighting women in the US maritime community and how that came about. You told me that you asked the entire maritime industry in the US to nominate the women for this special edition, honoring the IMO theme 2019, and that everyone who was nominated was invited to be interviewed in the magazine. 2 ladies declined, but everyone else is in that fantastic magazine. I will put a link in the show notes to this podcast to the digital version of the Proceedings, as I know that you ran out of printed copies the first week it was released, and that you had to order new printing. Your project brings tears to my eyes. You made the maritime world stop and think about the visibility of the women in the maritime community. And that is exactly what we need to do if we're going to attract more females to our beloved industry. So out of 129 episodes, this was the 63rd female guest in the Shipping Podcast. I am getting closer and closer to my goal of having 50% men and 50% women as guests on this podcast. Thank you for listening. Until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a Shipping Podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.